Hey, it's Arkeem Ra. I just decided that it's long overdue that I make a video on the subject of the Talented and Gifted, or TAG program, and how it's connected to MK Ultra and the secret space programs. So essentially, when I was in second grade, I got called down to the office randomly, and I got whisked into the counselor's room, and there was a gentleman that was there who was with the state apparently, and they said something about a new program that was designed to help people with special that might have special gifts or talents succeed and to not get looked past and not have their special talents and abilities go by the wayside because they didn't have the resources that they need. Is the way that it was explained to me. And essentially, I'm pretty sure they said it was a talented and gifted program, even though the actual talented and gifted program I don't think is an MK Ultra program. Maybe it is to some extent, but it's separate from the mind control um, secret space program MK Ultra hardcore portion of it. I'm pretty sure. More on that later. I'll explain why I believe that. But essentially, I was taken to this room. The man was there, and I was asked a bunch of questions. And the questions were very strange. There were questions like, "Are you abducted by extraterrestrials? Do you talk to angels? Can you see the future?" Um, just stuff like that. And then with some mundane, fairly reasonable questions mixed in, but also some of the questions were very, very odd. Like, a terrorist attack is going to happen in the future. Uh, and the government needs to prevent it. And they want you to walk through a crowd and read people's minds to try to find who the agitators are so that they can be arrested before the crime even happens. Do you agree with this approach in doing this? And it was basically seemingly trying to gauge whether I would be morally against or for doing certain things, which were they're giving me very science fiction scenarios that I always to this day remember this moment, and it confused the heck out of me because they were asking me questions about like time travel and reading people's minds, and I found it very odd. um, for my whole life. And it was around this time that I started getting abducted and started being afraid of being abducted every night and looking around for spaceships when I'm walking home alone at night and stuff like that. Because just from my neighbors who lived on the street, but I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to just walk around at night. But it was a thing that I was very afraid of, and I think there were times where I was taken at convenient moments. But and I've definitely had a lot of dreams about it during that time for sure. But what I can tell you is that it wasn't until much later in life that I realized, wait a minute, that guy asking me those questions and all that weird stuff happening to me kind of all correlates. Seems to all have to, you know, seems to be connected, right? Um, so I delved into these memories more. I really meditated on them. And I went into them as deeply as I could, and I did recover some memories. And essentially, what I recalled is a man in a brown suit who had seemingly had access to me that was beyond rational comprehension because he had portal tech, I guess. And I remember this individual would. I remember being strapped onto a table, and I believe that the man in the brown suit and the man that was in the room that interviewed me are the same person. Where I did the paperwork, right? But my memory of that occasion in that room, the person's face is blanked out. So I don't know if it's the same guy, but I am almost positive, I would say, that it is the same guy. But essentially, there's this guy in a brown suit who I can't remember his face. If I saw him, I'd be able to say that's the guy. Um, And I remember that he would put his cigarettes. He smoked lots of cigarettes. He'd put his cigarettes out on me when I was trying to leave my body to get away from stuff that he was doing to me, to ground me to my body. Um, and he'd tell me, "We know what you are, you monster," all this stuff. And what I remember is they would take me out of school to this underground facility, and he would be there. And what they were doing is there's more pamphlets, more multiple uh, answer quizzes, but also stuff that had to do with colors, shapes, logic. Um, went pretty deep, and I'm pretty sure they also did stuff where they tested if we could make things float with our telekinesis. And with one particular uh, procedure that did to me is something that I remember very well, and it was being strapped to a table, electrodes hooked up to my fingertips, my toes, and my genitals, and basically there was a TV in the room or the next room. I don't know because I couldn't see it, but there was a TV, and every time that the color changed on the TV, it would be blue, purple, orange, whatever. It would beep, and I was told to guess the color, even though I couldn't see it. And I was also on an IV of hardcore drugs, psychedelic drugs. And basically, when the screen changed and beeped, if I said the wrong color, they would electrocute the shit out of me to near death. And it got to the point where eventually they did activate my abilities, and I was able to beep, say the color every time. Beep, 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 And those were the kind of tests that they would run on you and things that they would do to activate your abilities. They'd put you in a situation where you think you don't even have these abilities. You as a child are completely unaware that actually you might be able to do that. And they put you in such an extreme fight or flight situation where it seems like your survival depends on it, right? That these abilities come out. And of course the drugs and all of the hypnosis and weird stuff they do to you, of course, helps with that as well. So that was what was being done under the nose of the Talented and Gifted program. Is certain kids that were, from what I recall, I was given paperwork during that talk with the gentleman, and they asked me if I wanted to be in Talented and Gifted, and I believe I filled out some of the paperwork, and they also sent some paperwork home with me for my mom to sign. And she signed the paperwork thinking, oh great, my son is in this wonderful program because they're special, and they're going to help my son. Great, win-win for everyone. So what I found later though is, so when I went into third grade, I talked to some different kids who were in the Talented and Gifted program, who I remembered being there and with who I had implanted memories of being in Talented and Gifted with. And I wasn't in Talented and Gifted anymore magically the next year. And I remember asking the teacher, like, why am I not in the Talented and Gifted program? They're like, I don't know. I'm not the Talented and Gifted person. I'm not the teacher that has to do with that. I don't know why you're not in it. And there are these kids. I remember their names and everything. And they basically said you weren't ever there. You weren't in the Talented and Gifted program, and you're making it up. And I'm like, no, they like tested my IQ, and it was really high, and I did all these tests, and they're like, that's you weren't in the, you're making it up. They basically made fun of me. Now I've talked to other people who have had strange experiences and more or less are also part of MK Ultra mind control, super soldier stuff. And they also have had the same experience where they were in the Talented and Gifted program, but then there are other kids that tell them that they're never there. So what this tells me is it's easier to explain to a very small group of kids why, like, it's easier to write that off than to a whole school, right? So that's why I think that the Talented and Gifted program is connected to it. And it's called the TAG program, right? Because they're tagging indigo children. A lot of you might remember how much of a subject this was at one point, where people were talking about how there's going to be this next generation of children that are going to be born. They're going to be psychically aware. They're going to have magical powers and all this crazy stuff, right? And they're going to help the world with their abilities and their gifts. And turns out it doesn't seem like that's true, right? Because you don't see that happening. Well, I mean, that's because they're too valuable to the military-industrial complex. You got a kid who can see the future. You got a kid who can read people's minds. You got somebody who can choke people out with telekinesis. Think about the implications of what that would mean for the military if you can mind control these people and use them as a weapon. So that's what's happening through the Talented and Gifted program. The Talented and Gifted program is a program to tag every single kid that has these kind of abilities and make sure they're deactivated in their public civilian lives because it's dangerous and they don't want to have people walking around that can read minds and predict the future and manipulate reality, basically, right? So they have to deactivate us. That's important to them. And B, they're too valuable to us to just let that go and let that go to the wayside. We're used in the military-industrial complex, not only here on Earth, but out in space as well. And that's how this is connected to the secret space programs. And that's how they find kids to turn into super soldiers. They're kidnapping your kids. This is important. This is the biggest fucking news story of the fucking century. There's nothing more important than this, if you ask me, is the fact that we are fighting in proxy wars for ETs that we have nothing to do with. We are their cattle. They send us in the wars that we have nothing to do with. And they give us artificial thoughts and feelings and emotions to make us think we're doing the right thing. And even artificial memories to make us think that we were doing the right thing. There's nothing, and yes, there are human groups doing this as well. There are human factions fighting against each other. There's time travel involved, and these people are manipulating the timeline from all these different points. You've got our current governments as is, and people thinking on a chess level, or on a checkers level, when these people are thinking on a chess level. They're playing a game that you can't even understand. They've got technology and abilities that seem magical and otherworldly and make them that made people of old times think there were wizards or whatever. But these are just normal people with technology and people who understand how things work better than the average man. That's all it is. And their slavery operation, because that's what this is, it cannot continue if people are aware of it happening. It depends on people not knowing that it actually exists. It depends on people not understanding how time travel works, not understanding how soul swapping into a clone body works, and being able to put somebody back like it didn't happen. If you don't understand that, then you have an indisposable resource. They use this over and over and over again for all sorts of different wars. Our DNA is valuable because they can create a clone of us once they buy that DNA and then come scoop us up and throw us in that body, read our activation codes, and get us to do what they want. And that's what this is all about. They're kidnapping your kids through the public school systems. They've been doing it through the church for thousands of years. Why do you think it's called an altar boy? Because they're raping them and creating altars. Fucking read in between the lines, people. That's the ancient way of doing it, and they're still doing it to this day. They used to fracture the kids through sexual torture. Now they have more advanced methods, but they're still using that. It's time to wake up. It's time for people to realize what's happening. I can't think of anything more important than waking up to this. I can't think of anything that matters more, at least to me. Because I think that every human being on this planet deserves to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that they're not going to be taken to live a whole nother lifetime to fight in some war that they have fucking nothing to do with. All right? That's what this is about. This is about this planet being an indispensable slave farm and us having to wake up to that fact in order to be able to stop it. You can't stop a phenomenon that you don't know exists. You can't fight a war that you don't even know you're a part of, that you're fighting. So the first step is you, the public, the average person, to at least try to wrap your head around this. I mean, MK Ultra is public. It is public fact. The files are unsealed that they're trying to create psychic weapon super soldiers that were mind controlled, and they never shut down the program. Congress just cut off the funding to an organization that sold cocaine and caused the crack epidemic. Do you think that cutting off our tax funding to them mattered? Do you think that they cared? Do you think that they stopped? Nobody went in there and arrested these guys and brought them to prison. They were still working for the CIA. Do you think they just gave up on it? No. And that's what I'm trying to explain to you, is they moved on to children because it worked better. They created a whole system for finding the ones who work the best. And that's where we are now. And that's where we've been. So that's what the Talented and Gifted program is. That's how it's connected to MK Ultra. Sorry that I got so worked up. It's kind of hard not to. Can you imagine? I hope that you're all doing well out there. That's my video.